What kind of childhood and mental structure can create a mind like Ed Gein's? Today I want to talk about his psychology and motivation. However, before analyzing his mind, we should begin with his story, because understanding his background helps us understand him more clearly. He was born in 1907. He grew up with his parents and his brother, Henry. His father was a passive and alcoholic man, completely different from his mother. His mother was extremely strict and deeply religious. She displayed obsessive and controlling behaviors, and she believed that women were sinful and morally corrupt. According to her, women were a source of evil and temptation. She was so strict that she did not allow her sons to socialize. Although Ed and Henry attended school for a short time, their mother eventually withdrew them and moved the family to a farm. Their father later died, but his death did not deeply affect their mother because she despised him. As a result of this isolated upbringing, Ed and Henry struggled to build social relationships. They became shy and socially withdrawn. Whenever Ed tried to connect with classmates, he was punished by his mother. He was also mocked and excluded because of a physical issue with his left eye, which made him feel even more alienated. One example that demonstrates the unhealthy family dynamic is that their mother made them promise to remain virgins for life. This shows the extreme psychological control she had over them. Later, Henry began living with a woman, which conflicted with that promise. Eventually, Henry died under suspicious circumstances, and many believe Ed was responsible. He burned the body, possibly to cover up the crime. After some time, his mother died. This event became a psychological turning point in his life. She had been the central figure in his world, and her death left him completely alone. He began visiting her grave obsessively, and later exhumed corpses from local cemeteries. His actions suggest a desperate attempt to cope with unbearable loneliness and unresolved attachment. He later committed murders. In one case, he killed a bar owner because, according to him, she resembled his mother. In another case, he killed a hardware store owner and brought her body home. Eventually, he was caught after the disappearance of one of his victims raised suspicion. He was declared mentally unfit for trial and spent the rest of his life in a mental institution. Psychologically, one of his central issues was his extreme dependency on his mother. According to Kenneth Adams, the term mother-enmeshed man, MEM, describes men who are psychologically unable to separate from their mothers. While I am not a professional and cannot diagnose anyone, many characteristics of Ed Gein align with this concept. He could not make decisions independently, felt uncomfortable being alone, and had no emotional boundaries in his relationship with his mother. There was no privacy, no separation, and no independent identity. There are also suggestions that he experienced psychotic symptoms, possibly schizophrenia. He reportedly claimed to see or feel his mother's presence after her death. He appeared trapped in a distorted internal world filled with fantasies and hallucinations. His desire to wear women's clothing was not related to gender identity, but rather an attempt to symbolically recreate or preserve his mother through his own body. Unlike other serial killers such as BTK or Jeffrey Dahmer, Ed Gein was not primarily driven by dominance, control, or sadistic pleasure. His crimes seem deeply connected to pathological attachment, identity confusion, and unresolved grief. He chose victims who resembled his mother, particularly older women. He did not hate her. On the contrary, he loved her in a distorted and obsessive way. After killing his victims, he used parts of their bodies to create objects, attempting to reconstruct a symbolic version of his mother. His crimes later inspired fictional characters such as Norman Bates from Psycho, Leatherface from the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and even aspects of Hannibal Lecter. However, behind these horror icons lies a deeply disturbed and emotionally broken individual. When we look at Ed Gein, we see a monster. But when we look deeper, we see something more disturbing than evil itself. We see the catastrophic result of isolation, psychological enmeshment, emotional suppression, and untreated mental illness. He was not born as a monster. He was shaped by an environment of extreme control, distorted morality, emotional neglect, and pathological attachment. His story forces us to ask uncomfortable questions. How powerful is early childhood in shaping identity? What happens when a child grows up without emotional boundaries? How dangerous can unresolved attachment and suppressed emotions become? Ed Gein's life reminds us that evil does not always emerge from hatred. Sometimes it grows from dependency, loneliness, and psychological fragmentation. Understanding his mind does not justify his crimes, but it helps us understand how a human being can slowly transform into something unrecognizable. And perhaps that understanding is what truly unsettles us the most.